okay, last night, I have a cold right now. I don't feel that great. I have toilet paper by the side of my bed and the lights are off. It's probably, I was in bed early last night. I was in bed at like 9:30, like going to bed. And so I'm blowing my nose over the bed. And then all of a sudden, like Brett comes over and like his arm just starts like touching my tush. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Me?
And I'm like, he's like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, I am blowing snot out of my nose right now. Why on earth are you like tapping my ass? Like, I know what you want right now. I am literally sick, blowing snot out of my nose, and you are actively trying to have sex with me? I'm like, you've got to be kidding. Like, there's just like, I'm like, how is this attractive to you right now? I'm literally sick, blowing snot out of my nose, and you feel the urge.
Hi everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of She's Got It Together. I'm your host, Jessica.
And I'm Samantha. Each week we peel back the curtain on what it really looks like to have it together.
From the messy moments to the milestones, we're here to share it all.
So grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and let's dive into today's topic.
All right. We're back today, and we are going to be talking about something a little bit uncomfortable, something that we don't necessarily want to talk about, and something that doesn't necessarily feel great.
That's exactly right.
So we're going to talk about sex, that great three-letter word, and some of the not so fun pieces about it. We've probably all had at least a time or two where it didn't work out so well for us or didn't feel great for us. But we're going to dive in a little bit deeper into some actual issues that we women have run into. Usually it's something that has happened, within our journey of life, whether it's becoming a mom or different medications that cause things. But we're going to dive into that today and kind of get into some of the nitty gritty that Samantha and I have experienced over the years. So,
well, I think like this like topic, I feel like can be uncomfortable to talk about. And it's something that like people may not talk about all the time. And like, we were just talking about this as like sisters before we like decided to record, and we're like, you know what, like this would be useful for other people to know, because
yes,
I didn't know like my situation, like what was going on and stuff like that. So it's like, I feel like there's not a lot of, I mean, there's definitely more out there now, I think, than there used to be about certain like, issues with sex or low sex drive or like whatever it may be. But it's not something everyone talks about.
It's kind
like
of
with
just
their friends. It's just can be an uncomfortable conversation, or you feel like you're alone and like something's wrong with me and like I'm the only one going through this, and so you don't want to say it to anyone, or they might think like you're weird, or like you have a low sex drive. Oh no, I like to have sex all the time, or
it's just that
it hurts when you have sex. Like
your spouse.
Something's wrong. Like what's wrong?
You're kinda on your own. Yeah.
So it can be an uncomfortable conversation. So we're like, you know what? We're going to talk about it. It's going to help somebody. It'll reach someone, and I hope it helps someone. Otherwise, you're just going to get a lot of personal information about me and Jessica.
Yes, you are. We have to learn to hit record while we're just chatting these days, because we end up with a lot of good content, and we don't have it to share at the end of our conversation. So we're doing it today. But I will start with this because I think mine will lead into yours.
Sure.
So I shouldn't say growing up, but as a younger woman, I had no issue. I love sex. There was no problem. Completely normal. But I think what changed for me was being put on an antidepressant. So I'm pretty sure most of us have heard, like that's like the crazy side effect of that. And there are some that don't do that, but of course those never worked for me. So being on that for years, I mean, I'm talking like probably 25 years I've been on something. That has just kind of slowly dwindled the sex drive. And what I have found is it's taken away the spark that happens. It's like it's not that I don't like sex or that I don't want to have it once the moment begins.
Yeah.
It's the moment has to be initiated by someone else.
Right.
It's just like
you're
it's
not initiating it. It's
right.
not
It's not
something
top
that
of
you're
mind.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. That spark, that drive that you normally would have isn't there. It's just such a odd thing. But, you know, like I said, with years of this, it just kind of became the normal for me.
Right.
And it's very hard on a relationship, especially as it gets worse and worse. And it just kind of continues down that negative path, I guess. Even though that there's a reason for it, you know, it's
Right.
not that, you know, you're not attracted.
Well, it's not like
to
you
your
don't want to
spouse.
connect with your husband. It's like
Right.
your mind and body just like don't get that urge to do
Yeah, like that signal that your body
Yeah.
sends is being blocked by a medication that, you know.
So it makes it
I've-
harder because it's not
Right.
like because then you start to feel bad and then you're like, okay, I
Exactly.
should probably just do it even though I don't want to or feel like it.
Right. Right.
You know,
Well,
and then that's
exactly.
not fun
That
or
does-
healthy necessarily.
It's
either.
right. Right. Like,
But you're like,
one of us is going to be unhappy here.
Right. So that's what makes
But-
it hard is you feel guilty for not feeling like you want to just like pounce on your husband or your partner or
Right.
whoever.
Right.
And
Or
it's not
I'm-
that you don't want to. You just, it's like your medication is, like you said, blocking that signal to make
Yeah.
you want to do that. And that's not your fault and that's not your husband's fault.
No.
But
it's
It's
it just
like, what do
is
you
what
do?
it is.
This makes it harder. And
Right,
it can
it
make it harder
does.
on your relationship because you're not connecting in that intimate level that
Yeah.
you
And, you know,
essentially need.
yeah. And you know, as long as it's, you know, brought on by him, we're good, you know, like it'll still, it's still fine. You know, everything still goes the same.
Right.
It's just that it's not going to be initiated by me unless I'm really, really thinking about it or I'm,
Right.
you know, like it's like I have to set a reminder, you know,
Or you're
like
amping
just-
yourself up. You're in the bathroom. You're like, okay,
I know. I'm like,
we're gonna
okay,
do this.
it's
We're gonna do
you know,
this.
it's been 2
Let's
days.
go.
It's time. It's time. Like we got to go do this, or I'm gonna hear it. But you know, like I've
2
gone to
days.
the
Oh
point-
gosh, you're nice.
Oh. Well, let's just say I have a husband that has some serious needs, and
He is a
you know,
Scorpio.
yeah, he is. Yes, there's a lot of needs there, and the house runs smoother when those needs are met.
Well, you know, you make a good point with that because I personally don't necessarily, I mean, I don't have like a high sex drive by any means. And I feel like since, you know, I've gotten older and like I've had Bo and like now I'm pregnant with my second baby. And like, you know, life happens and like you're a new mom, you're tired, you're figuring out like motherhood, and then you have like a spouse who's being somewhat neglected because you just don't have the energy.
Yeah.
And I mean, I get overstimulated very easily and like I just naturally like I really don't like to be touched that much, which doesn't help because I think that's another thing. I don't like to be touched a ton.
In general,
me.
like that's how you've always
So
been. Like,
I'm not necessarily pouncing on Brett either. And it's for different reasons too.
yeah.
But it's like when you feel guilty that you're not necessarily like engaging in intimate activities with your husband when they want to. Like literally, okay, last night I have a cold right now. I don't feel that great. I have toilet paper by the side of my bed and the lights are off. It's probably I was in bed early last night. I was in bed at like 9:30, like going to bed. And so I'm blowing my nose over the bed. And then all of a sudden like Brett comes over and like his arm just starts like touching my tush. And I'm like, what are you
Kidding
doing?
me?
And I'm like, he's like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, I am blowing snot out of my nose right now. Why on earth are you like tapping my ass? Like, I know what you want right now. I am literally sick,
It's not
blowing
happening.
snot out of my nose, and you are actively trying to have sex with me? I'm like, you've got to be kidding. Like,
Get
there's
outta
just
here.
like, I'm like, how is this attractive to you right now? I'm literally sick, blowing snot out of my nose, and you feel the urge. I'm like, it's just like, anytime, anywhere, he is like ready to go, and I'm
But
like,
hey,
you've got to be kidding
You're
me.
attractive to him in any
Right.
state.
So I
That's a
shouldn't be
great
complaining.
thing,
I
right?
really
Like,
shouldn't be complaining.
twist this to
But I'm
positive
just
for a minute.
like, you've got to be kidding me, man. Like, I was just like cracking up. I'm like, are you serious? And this is like 100%. This happened last night. And I'm
Oh
like,
my
it's almost
gosh.
like meant to be that we started talking about this. But I'm just like, okay, I should appreciate that my husband loves me and finds me attractive. But I'm like, you know what? No, I don't feel well.
I just can't right now.
I want to go to bed. I was like, Bo is asleep. I want to go to sleep. I want to like kick this cold. Like, I'm sorry, I am not
You
in the
stay
mood.
on your side of the king bed.
Please
Don't cross
stay
the
over there.
line.
Well, that's the
Just-
thing. We got a king bed like a couple years ago. And he sleeps
So you can
closer
touch
to
him.
me now. I'm like, there's a reason we got a king bed. I don't need to be touched in my sleep. Like I said, I don't like to be touched. In this king bed, we have room literally for like another person to sleep if we needed to. And he still proceeds to like sleep so his feet can like touch my feet. Or like he will roll over in the night where his butt is like bumped up to my butt. And I'm like,
Aw.
Brett, we have this king bed and all this space, and you are still like, it's like you
You're still
still
touching
find
me.
your way to me. And I'm like, I
He
love you
loves
so
you.
much. But my love language is not physical touch. And I know yours is. But I was like, I'll kick him over. I literally will push his feet back over. I'm like, get away from me. And I sound like a terrible person. But I know I am not the only woman that is like this. I'm just
No,
like,
that's tough. I mean, gosh, it's funny because when we go to bed at night, we'll touch for the first little bit, and then it's like
then it's like
there's
separate.
Well, it is. It's like that moment hits, and it's like we both hit a wall, and it's like
Right.
sleep time, and we go to our separate sides.
See,
Like,
we need to talk to Brett about this. Sleep time means you don't touch each other.
yeah, I mean, unless you're screwing with each other, like like literally just messing
Yeah.
with each other, trying to instigate something, not
Right.
sex, just to be a jerk kind of thing.
Right,
Then
yeah.
you're not touching. But
But at
You know
least
what?
DJ understands that. Brett
He
does.
does.
not.
we don't like to be hot in our sleep, so of course
No,
any
God.
body touching is just too much. But when
Yeah.
when I got pregnant with both girls, I turned into like a sex beast again. Like,
I hear that. I did not. I wanted nothing to do with it when
Well,
I was pregnant.
with Hayden, so I mean Hayden, she's almost 16, but
God, that's so crazy.
I know it is crazy. I was able to stay on my antidepressant with her, which now that is not the case. And when I had Taylor, I couldn't. In fact, before we started trying, my doctor made me get off of it. So that was a whole thing. Like it was a
Right.
traumatic experience.
Well, and I feel like you had like kind of a rough pregnancy with Taylor. You were sick a lot.
I was sick. Well,
you lost
I
a
was
lot
on-
of weight with her.
I did. With Hayden, I was on bed rest for the majority of
Right.
it. And then with Taylor, I was just plain sick.
Yeah.
But I was an emotional train wreck because I was
Yeah.
off of that, and then
Well, and then just your hormones in
was-
general when you're pregnant. My God.
But I was horny.
Well,
So
I'm
it
sure
was
DJ
all
appreciated that
around.
phase.
Well, but the thing was, I had a prolapse placenta,
Oh, no.
so we couldn't have sex.
That's just terrible.
I
Oh
mean,
my
like,
God.
come on, like, do you want to
Like, what do you
tease
do?
us anymore? I mean,
God.
so it was
It's like, can I get
yeah.
back on that antidepressant, please? You
Right.
don't
I mean-
control this.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, because by the time I had Taylor, because I mean, there's a 5-year gap in there, they realized that the medication
be on
wasn't
it.
safe
Yeah.
to take. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Right.
So yeah, it's just it's crazy.
Isn't it
how
funny
all
though?
worked out.
Like pregnancy, I feel like pregnancy and then just like post pregnancy, like changes your body so much. And I feel like that's kind of what we were talking about was like
Yeah,
my
that's
situation
exactly.
now, because when I was pregnant with Bo, like I said, like I didn't have like a crazy like sex drive or anything like that. But I mean, I feel like it was normal. Like we like continued on as normal, but there were like some days where I was just like, oh God, no, don't touch me. But that's kind of like every day. But now, like after I had Bo, you know, they say like you've got 6 weeks and then like you're good to go.
Good to go,
And
yeah.
so Brett's just like, okay, 6 weeks, yeah. And I'm like, whoa,
Marked on the calendar.
no. I was like, I am not ready. I was like, I know I'm not ready. I don't feel ready. So I think it's important to know that like just because your doctor clears you at 6 weeks for sex does not mean that you necessarily are ready to have sex after 6 weeks.
Even
like I
emotionally,
didn't have a C-section. I had a vaginal birth. Like I like was
Yeah.
like I am not ready. And mine was like a very like smooth and easy labor and delivery. Like I went in, like my water broke for my first pregnancy, which is
crazy. That's
somewhat rare.
Doesn't
I was
happen
already
often.
I was already dilated to a 4 prior to my water breaking. I just wasn't having any contractions. So then my water broke in the middle of the night. We went to the hospital. I had Bo, like we got there at 3. I had Bo at like 9. So I literally only pushed for 45 minutes to an hour, and I had Bo and he was fine and healthy and whatever. So it wasn't like I had like a traumatic birthing experience or I didn't tear or anything. Like it was very textbook. And so like at 6 weeks, like Brett's like, okay, yeah, let's go. And I'm like, no, like I'm not ready. Like it still kind of like hurts down there. Like I just don't feel ready. And then like your body's different. Like you feel different. Your hormones are still all over the place. Well, so then like a little while later, like we tried and I'm like, ow, like this really, really hurts.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nope, stop. Like it hurts. Like the penetration hurt. And I'm like, no. And so then like we tried later and like we got lube and everything. And I'm like, it still freaking hurts. I was like,
Yeah.
I almost feel like something's wrong. And mind you, I'm like breastfeeding also. And like, I didn't know that breastfeeding might have something to do with this. But I talked to my doctor because now I'm pregnant. And so I just thought it was me
Brett.
needing more time. And like, so the other thing is though, I also like was like, okay, like maybe if we just do it, like it'll like stretch things out or like
Right.
things will be,
You wouldn't think it would be so tight after you have a baby, though.
And that was
It's like
the
the
thing.
opposite.
I literally thought it was going to be the opposite, and apparently you just get tighter, or at least I did, or something. So then I'm doing all this research on like, because I also found out I had dystasis or diastasis, however you want to say it, recti, where your abdominal like muscles have separated, and normally they'll go back together, but for some women they don't. And so I had like a pretty decent gap on my like lower ab muscles, and so you have to do exercises for those to be like brought back together. They just won't come back together on their own. And so I was reading up about that, and that can, you know, cause like painful sex because it's like your pelvic, like you might have a pelvic floor issue, and you might need to do like therapy for that. And then there's different exercises. Like it was just getting overwhelming. I'm like, what's wrong?
She was a hot
like
mess.
this was like over a year of this, like, and it still hurts. We still have sex. It's like the penetration part is just a little uncomfortable now. And then it's like, okay, but we're not having like
You're
all
having
this
sex
crazy,
for
fun,
a
wild, like,
purpose. 'Cause
yeah.
you did get pregnant
So-
again, so you
right. So then it
purposeful
was like,
sex.
okay, well, we want to have another baby. Like, so and it's like, granted, we were having sex prior to trying to have a baby. It just wasn't the most fun, I guess, like for me, because
for
I
you,
was
yeah.
just like, you know,
Wasn't as
but then like
enjoyable.
I figured out kind of what works for me now.
Find your
but it-
position.
but it's different than what it was before, and I think that happens with like a lot of women. Like it's not always going to feel the same down there after baby. And so then I had my first doctor appointment, and I was supposed to have like literally like my yearly appointment with my doctor was around the same time. Like we found out I was pregnant, and I had to go in for my OB appointment. So I talked to her about this, and she's like, okay, well, when did you stop breastfeeding? And I was like, November. And this is now January. And so she's like, okay, well, it probably explains why, you're still having, like, it's still uncomfortable with penetration, is because, like, the tissue and the muscles while you're breastfeeding are just, like, really tender for some women. And it takes a while for them to, like, get back to normal. And then she's like, and now you're pregnant, so they're not going to get back to normal. And then it's going to be, I plan on breastfeeding again. So then it's probably not going to be back to normal until I'm done. And then if we choose, if we choose to have a third, it's going to be like the same problem. And so I'm like, oh my God, like, this is crazy, because, like, just from breastfeeding, it's like sex is uncomfortable. And I'm like, I had no idea. And granted, there could be, like, some other issues going on. Maybe I do need to strengthen my pelvic floor. Maybe I will just try to do, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do those while I'm pregnant. Like, I was like, now that there's a whole other thing. So
you don't
it's crazy.
Tighten it too much. You want the baby to come out properly.
So I'm like, maybe post-baby, like postpartum, I will do a little bit more, like, exercise focused on just, like, strengthening, like, my, like, pelvic floor, and that'll help. But it's just crazy that, like, I thought, like, something's got to be wrong. Like, this isn't normal. Like, it shouldn't hurt this much. It's been over a year. Like, why does it still hurt, kind of thing? And I know there's other women out there that probably are thinking the same thing. And I did a ton of research on my own. I'm, like, looking up all this stuff. I almost went to pelvic floor therapy. I almost, I'm trying all these exercises. I bought this, like, diastasis recti guide and all this stuff. And it was overwhelming. And it's just like, then you're also trying to take care of your baby and your house and your husband and all this stuff. And I found myself just, like, getting overwhelmed and not even doing half of the exercises, which probably didn't help my problem.
Yeah.
But I think that, you just, one, it was my first baby. I had no idea what was normal, what wasn't normal postpartum. And then you just feel like you don't really want to talk about it, because then you're like, oh, like, you're not having sex with your husband. Like, that's weird and it hurts. Like, that's weird too. Like, you're just kind of like, it's not something that you just, like, talk about all the time. And so I feel like that's what I'm like, what? If we can just, like, put this out there, and somebody else that might be going through this, I am not a health professional. I don't know if what I'm saying is 100% accurate, but I know from the research that I've done and talking to my doctor, like, breastfeeding can have a part of it. But I also maybe just need to strengthen my pelvic floor too.
But it's worth bringing up to your doctor. It's not.
Oh, for sure.
You're not alone.
Well, and that's the thing. I probably should have said something to my doctor
earlier. Yeah.
I mean, I've been dealing with this for over a year, so I'm like, I should have said something sooner, and I didn't. And I now am kind of like, well, if I would have done that, is there something that would have changed? Would she maybe have? And of course, like, after this baby will, like, she, like, checked me out. Obviously, everything internally is fine.
Yeah, I was going to say physically it's fine.
Yeah, it's just like that. Those muscles are just super tender, apparently. But, it's all part of bringing life into the world. It's the circle of life. But,
yeah.
Who knew?
I mean, I'd say the same on that, because I didn't talk to the doctor about my issues early on either, because it's not.
It's just another thing you have to do. I feel like you put yourself on the back burner, and you're like, I'm fine. It's okay. Like, it's not the end of the world. Like, if my husband can't have sex with me right now. But, that also put a strain on our relationship. And I think having a new baby, and this could be a whole nother topic, having a baby, like, definitely, like, Brett and I had to figure out our relationship, because it was just like, I was totally focused on Bo and what he needed. And, like, so Brett was a little neglected, which, he can be a little neglected after I have the baby. But for him, when he's, like, the center of my world, and then now, like, the baby comes in, and of course he loved and adored Bo, but it's like our relationship changed.
Well, it's a big change. And within your first year of marriage, just like we did.
Yes. We have We've been married for
in
2 years
common.
now. We had Bo the first year. So yeah,
We did that with Hayden.
Oh,
And
it's a big change.
So it's like you never get the honeymoon phase, but you guys were together a long time like we were.
Forever.
And even though that's the case, it was very challenging to learn how to be a official couple or married couple, and have a new baby at the same time.
Year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing too. There's so many things that go into being a married couple. And that's like, yeah, we were together for like,
but you're official
for a long time
combined,
right. That's the thing. Like you're figuring out finances, you're figuring out like all these things. And then you're also having a baby at the same time. And you might not have figured everything out yet, or the dynamic of things. And then I stopped teaching and I started working with you. So like that was a different change. And so we went through a lot of changes our first year of marriage. And I think all of them piling on kind of around the same time was really hard on Brett and I, but like we definitely came out of it stronger. It's just, it was definitely something that you don't necessarily, I thought like, oh yeah, like he was great when I was pregnant. He was so like attentive. Well,
it was because he was getting attention though, like.
Right. And so then once I had
no
Bo,
third wheel.
Right. So once I had Bo, I'm like, what the heck? Like, why did you stop being so attentive? And like, I feel like you just kind of left me in the dust and you don't care anymore. And like, obviously, like my hormones are raging too. I'm super sensitive. It's just like this whole thing. And then like, you're just kind of like at each other and you're like, we should be happy. We just had a beautiful baby. Like, why are we like fighting over stupid things? And then you're trying to like not micromanage him when he's doing things with the baby, but you see him doing something wrong, or you're like, why are you doing it? Yeah, it's like, why are you doing it that way? I don't do it that way. And so it's just like, it's a lot. And you know what?
It is.
I think it can, if you don't already have like a strong foundation, it can be so hard on your marriage.
Yeah.
When you go into it with like a strong foundation, I mean, it's tough.
Yeah. Well, and then throw in, some medical issues with with Hayden. Remember with everything we went through that first week with her, like
jaundice and
she was our glow
acid
bug.
reflux.
You were running, or you ran over to the house a couple times in the middle of the night so I could run to the store.
Yeah, DJ was gone, and you called me at like 2 a.m.
I think that was when I gave you my car, didn't I?
Yeah,
I had turned in my leash shot. And I think I let you guys have that for a bit.
Yeah, because we had to share a car.
To use. Yes, you did have to share a car. That's right. Because I remember the very first week after we had Hayden, that was the hardest week for DJ. He just kind of lost his marbles. I don't know what happened. Like reality sunk in, and
You guys are pretty young though too. Like you were 25, 26?
26. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was 31.
Well, I was 31 when I had Taylor. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll be 34, just 34 when I have.
We weren't doing any late age babies. Like 31 was old enough. That was a rough.
A different time now.
I know it is, but you know what? You guys do it. You did everything later. You got married later.
Oh yeah.
Like I mean, it was just different. That was late for me.
I got married a little later than I would have liked.
Yes,
but that was Brett, doing. He just wasn't proposing fast enough.
No, and you got married quick after that. What, 6 months?
Five.
You planned that out, and boom.
Well, and it was also during COVID, so that was also like a whole thing.
Oh yeah,
it was like the end of COVID, kind of. So things we wanted to do, like we couldn't do, but it turned out to be great. So
yeah, it was a fun one, but yeah. So I mean, his dad kind of talked to him and got him back in line, and it was all fine. But I think because I was trying to nurse Hayden, and it turns out she was basically starving for the first week because I had nothing come in. And they kept saying, the lactation counselor at the hospital, because we hadn't had our first visit with the pediatrician, she's like, oh, she's getting everything she needs. It's fine. Whatever you have is just fine. I should have trusted
That's what
my
happened
mom
with Bo.
instinct.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, are you kidding?
He had the same problem because we went in to the doctor like 2 days after 3 days after maybe he was born, because he was born on a Saturday or a Friday. We went in on a Monday. But yeah, he, in the hospital, I'm like, he's not really like wanting to eat. And they're like, well, it's like, I'm like, he's just wanting to sleep. And they're like, well, that's fine if he wants to sleep. I'm like, but then he's not eating anything. And they're like, well, remember, his stomach is the size of like a pea at that time. So they really don't need much food. And I'm like, okay. So then we go to the doctor and he had lost weight already.
Right. That was
and then he was at the point of like already being too underweight.
Yeah.
And so we talked to the lactation consultant at our pediatrician, and like she helped me and stuff. And then like I thought he was doing okay, and then like a couple days later, like in the middle of it, he's just like screaming, like starving. And I was like about ready to give him some formula that we had, and Brett's like, just wait a minute, like you really wanted to be on this breastfeeding journey, like just you pumped a couple ounces earlier, let's give him that. So we give him that, and he like sucks it down in 2 seconds. And then I start pumping again to like try to get him some food because he's not getting it from me. So then I called a lactation consultant the next morning. We went over and then, tried to figure it out again. And he actually latched there and then had this huge poop. And she's like, well, that's good. That's a good sign of a good feeding. And I'm like, okay, great. Let's do this again at home. And so it definitely like was a learning process. And for me, what I thought was interesting, which I had never thought about before, was like, I just saw babies came out knowing how to latch, knowing how to breastfeed. And she's like, he's still learning and you're learning. Like, he doesn't know what to do either. So he's trying to figure it out. And I'm like, I thought they just already knew how to breastfeed. I thought it was like a natural thing. But they don't. They have to learn how to do it. And of course, like, he figured it out because I breastfed for over a year. But it's just like, it's hard, and it's a mental and physical like thing.
Oh, it's a thing for sure.
And I mean, I'm glad Brett was there to like support me in that moment, because I was about ready to just be like, calm. Give him the damn formula. Right.
Yeah.
Because I was like, he's hungry. Calm. Like, I was not thinking. I was upset. I'm like, my baby is hungry. I'm not. And then you feel guilty as a mom. I'm like, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to like feed my baby. And I think that's the biggest thing with breastfeeding is like, it's all on you, and it's like, if they're not getting enough food, like it feels like, because it is like your fault or your body's fault.
Or if you eat something wrong and it gives them a bellyache, like that was always my thing. I'm like, am I going to do something silly?
God forbid. I had broccoli one night and it was not fun for Bo. So then I had to stop eating like anything green. Normally I'd be okay with that, but I'm like, no, I was like, I'm trying to be healthy and I can't eat. I'm like, most of the things that I like vegetable wise are green. Well, and I couldn't eat any of them because they're all like broccoli, Brussels sprouts. Like, you're like, those make babies pretty gassy. I'm like, okay, well. Oh, boy. I'm like, I don't like celery. I don't like.
Yeah, gosh.
But, now everything's good. We've got the, sex stuff somewhat under control. We've got being parents somewhat under control, and now we're having another baby, and we're just going to be into chaos again. But it'll. I was
going to say, you're going to just do another bout of all of this and see if you can get that under control.
And I'm like, you know what? If it's like 3 or 4 years of like just having to like deal with life like this, I'm okay with that. Like, it's a very small amount of time.
Yeah, but it's all at once. There's no gaps, because that, like I had the gap, so that's tough. It's like starting over, I think.
Obviously we're going to have 2 kids. We're still debating on number 3. We'll have 2 and see what happens. But I'm like, it's just the price of building a family.
It is. And obviously it was the grand plan, so it's...
Right. And you know what? For me, in my like somewhat low sex drive, I really don't mind not having sex all the time, but my husband doesn't appreciate it. But I'm like, you know what? It's not about you right now. Okay, it's about me and my health and the baby's health and all this stuff. I was like, you are fine.
When is it going to be about him now? You're going to have to make a moment when it's going to be
21
about him.
years from now.
So it'll be like that midlife. Well, actually, your midlife will be pretty late. So
It will be. I'll be in my
knocking on
50s.
your midlife soon.
I was calculating it out, and I think if we have 3 kids, I'll be like 50, mid-50s, like early to mid-50s when they turn 21. If I have a third.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's something to think about.
Yeah. So that's another thing why we're like debating on if we want to have another
something
one.
to think about.
Because we'll be much older. We'll be like the
gonna be
old
like-
grandparents that are like
gonna
in the
be
chairs,
like,
barely remembering anyone's name.
Father of the bride. Too.
Well, you know what? He looked older than he actually was because his hair's gray. They really
I
look that
know,
old.
but
Because they had a young kid. Well, right, yeah. We won't be that old, but like he'll be 21. I won't be having a new baby at 50. So
Oh, that's funny.
But then, Brett and I
yeah.
also are like, it might sound selfish to some people, but we want to be able to do things with like
you
our
wanna
kids when
enjoy-
they're grown, but we also want to like do things on our own and travel and stuff like that when we're still able to, like hopefully our health is okay and whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like, we're also
You need
thinking
that.
about like what we want, in our later years also. So,
Definitely.
we started things later, so we gotta decide what we want to do. And gosh, today it's so expensive. Everything's so expensive.
Oh my gosh.
And it's like, we have to be,
So expensive.
we have to think like, can we like reasonably, like, can we afford having like 3 kids, like a family of 5? Like we have to think about that and what we want to do and if we want to travel and stuff like that.
I think you can always afford it. It's just how much do you want to stretch the budget?
Well, how much are you willing to sacrifice too? Like
That's
what do you want to do with, what kind of like vacations do you want to have? Like what kind of, house do you want to have or car? Like, can we afford to get our kids cars? Like there's just so many things. Yeah. And of course, me being I'm somewhat of a pessimist. I just like look for all the negative things. I try not to be that way, but I also am like I think so far ahead of like, okay, what's gonna happen? So we found out that we're having a baby girl, and I about had like a meltdown. I thought I was gonna have another boy.
Or did?
I did have a meltdown, but I'm okay with it now. I'm very happy that we're having a healthy baby, and I'm okay that it's a girl. But I just had like this freak out moment. But I was thinking about all of the things like down the road and just like how the world is now, and I'm going to be so worried about her and like her meeting the wrong people or her getting in a bad situation, or like we have a wedding we have to pay for, we have prom dresses, we have like all of these things I have to worry about boys and if she's being safe.
Will they be
like
expensive?
I know, and I'm like, they are more expensive. We I'm like, what if she picks an expensive sport like I did? Like I figure skated, and I'm just like thinking about all of this stuff, and I'm like, you know what, Sam? Like, that is so far down the road. Just stop.
What if she wears
enjoy.
pink?
I know. I'm not. News to all, I am not a pink person, and my mother-in-law, Lovely, sent me 3 pink things in the mail right after we found out we were having a girl.
So, I talked to our mother yesterday.
Yeah, she got she's stuff.
Well, but she said she thinks she's the one that caused this pink issue with you because you and your sister, as twins, Sydney was always dressed in purple. You were always dressed in pink. She screwed it up. Yes.
Well, I prefer purple over
right. So all of your years of growing up, she's the cause.
And people thought we were boys because we barely had hair, so that's why she put us in pink and purple too. But back then they didn't have all the gender neutral clothes. No. I know, but you know what? I wonder if it's because we were staring at each other in these colors. We couldn't really see our color that we had on. We were staring at each other all the time. It's probably why she likes pink and I like purple. I mean, who knows the psychology of this?
There you go. That's a thought.
I also was a tomboy. Sid and I like had I think we did this for our own identity. Sydney was very girly. Sydney was very girly, like nail polish and makeup, and I was like soccer and just like my Adidas matching sets and all that stuff. Like, you know, I was not the girly. I didn't really like makeup. I mean, when I got older, yeah, of course I like got into that and boys and whatever. But I was more like, I like a good stuffed animal. I like
a good stuffed animal.
I like my good Adidas matching set. I like some like stuff that's like not girly. And I think I was doing that also to just like have my own identity.
Yeah.
But I also wasn't like interested in the same things as Sid was either, like at my personality. Mm-hmm. So it's just very interesting. I mean, we start this podcast talking about sex and all these things. We get into families and motherhood and babies. And now we're talking about, you know, why maybe I don't like pink. But,
you know, it's just how we do it.
It's how we roll.
It is. It's the rabbit holes we take. So,
you know.
Yeah. But back to where we started. I think it's okay to know that if you're not feeling that sex drive, you're definitely not alone, and there's reasons behind it. Different reasons. Mm-hmm. Definitely different reasons, but
and it's okay if there isn't a reason and you just have a low sex drive. Like there's nothing wrong with that either, and that's just something that
very normal.
Whoever you're with has to adjust to, you know.
Yeah,
like
it's part of you. It's who you are. I mean, yeah.
And if you feel like there's something wrong, like I did, like maybe talk to your doctor sooner than I did. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if it's a medication thing, like talk to your doctor about that, or just know that like this is just kind of part of your journey at this point. But just embrace it.
Who
Don't feel bad. I know it's hard to not feel bad, but like, you know, you gotta do what's best for you.
Yeah. I mean, we can't bounce the guilt off each other, you know? I mean, you feel guilty for not wanting it, and then he feels guilty for always wanting you to want it. You know, it's just, that's not healthy. So yeah. And there's options out there for things. I mean, there's a pink pill now. Have you all seen that? You know, there's the blue
of course
pill
it's pink
for the guys. There's a pink pill now.
See, that's what it is. It's society.
I know.
Blue for boys, pink for girls.
You know, that's just what it has to be, apparently.
I know.
Poor Sam.
People are crazy.
But yeah, so that's about, I don't know. That's our spiel for today. Yeah. We really did go all over the place, but
we did. But we hope you enjoy it. We hope you benefit from it, and just embrace you.
Yeah, 100%. Boom.
Goes the dynamite.
Thanks for joining us today on She's Got It Together. It's been a real journey sharing and laughing with you all.
We hope you're walking away with a smile on your face and a bit more confidence in your step.
Remember, you're not alone in this crazy ride called life. We're all in this together, one day at a time.
Don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and of course, share this podcast with all the incredible women in your life.
Join us next week for more stories, more laughs, and more real talk.
Until then, keep embracing your unique journey, and remember, you've got it together more than you think.